Okay, so in 1980 is when we first saw the classification of ADD, and many of you might be familiar with ADD. But ADD is actually now referred to as ADHD. And so what's going on with kind of the background of the various names of this disorder? So since the 1980s, when we first saw ADD, there's been a controversy regarding the symptoms. People were describing ADD with or without hyperactivity. There was undifferentiated ADD and kind of a misunderstanding about whether symptoms including or not including hyperactivity were kind of the same thing or not. And so we see ADD changing to be classified as ADHD in 1987. And now bringing us to even more modern times, since 2000, we now have these kind of three different subtypes of ADHD that are kind of helping us categorize the various symptoms that people will experience who have ADHD. So we have primarily inattentive ADHD, primarily hyperactive and impulsive ADHD, or ADHD that kind of has both. And we'll talk a little bit more about these different symptoms and what they mean. So, inattention. If you have ADHD with inattention, these are some of the things that you might experience. So you'd overlook or miss details. You're unable to sustain attention for many tasks. You might have difficulty organizing tasks, or you might be easily distracted by various stimuli. Now, hyperactivity and impulsivity is going to look different. A person who has these symptoms might experience fidgeting and restlessness. They cannot stay seated for very long. They're kind of constantly on the go, moving, doing something, and really talking nonstop. Might be more prone to interrupting and unable to stay quiet. And so this is kind of our modern understanding of ADHD with kind of the three subtypes. And as we'll get into more detail next time we're together with the science of Adderall, the kind of rediscovery of amphetamines. These drugs are what is most often used to treat ADHD, so attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, right? No longer ADD, but ADHD. And ADHD with really any of the following symptoms, so any of the three subtypes. And to wrap things up, folks, what is our kind of common, more modern understanding of what ADHD is and how it presents? So it occurs in about 7% of all children. Still, we're seeing it's about 3 times more common in boys. So it is diagnosed at a greater rate in boys than it is in girls. Now there is some kind of controversy, I guess, regarding why the diagnosis is occurring more in boys than in girls. Some folks argue that the way that boys and girls are socialized might impact whether or not girls are kind of left undiagnosed when they might actually have ADHD. Girls might be taught some kind of social skills that allow us to kind of glide past with ADHD without it necessarily being seen or diagnosed in ways that it might be in boys, just simply due to the way we're socialized and raised. But unlike what you heard me say about how it was earlier thought that this was really a disease of childhood and would kind of disappear into adulthood, it's becoming more accepted that symptoms often don't disappear as we age. About 15 to 50% of cases persist, right? So this is a kind of a huge range. And what we know about adults who are still living with ADHD is that they're at a higher risk for things like substance abuse, other types of mental illness like depression, among other things. And in the rest of class where we're discussing Adderall, we'll definitely get into a bit more the prevalence in adults, which I think should be interesting. So that is a brief history of amphetamines and ADHD. Up next, we'll be discussing a specific amphetamine in more detail, Adderall. And I'll leave you with this cat meme. See you in class.